So first of all, thank you guys for joining today. I know that this is an exam season for a lot of you, and the fact that you carved out the time in your schedule and decided to join the webinar on the admissions program is something I truly appreciate. We have not run an admissions program webinar for a very long time, and since then, lots of things changed, and we're at a situation right now where people join the admissions program without fully understanding all the nuances and everything that went into its production and its execution. So this webinar aims to answer all of those questions and precisely walk you through what you will get as a student at the admissions program and what that experience looks like. Something to mention about today's agenda is that we'll have a special guest, Ruhshona, who graduated from the admissions program. She's an incoming student at UPenn, and Ruhshona will share her experiences. And she also joined our team as a teacher's assistant for the upcoming cohort before she continues, or I guess starts her studies at UPenn. So she will share some of her experiences at the end. You can also prepare some questions for her, admissions-related questions for her. But before we begin, another observation that I have is that fewer people know about my background and where I'm coming from. And this is something that I have to reiterate from webinar to webinar. So I'll keep it very, very short. So we'll start about myself and then about the admissions program. So my name is Valera. I studied at the public school in Uzbekistan. And in my first application season, I essentially got rejected from every university I applied for, which were about 10 universities. And in the subsequent year, I rewrote my essays. I improved my SAT to 1520 super score. My IELTS was already 8, so I didn't retake it. And also I presented my project at the United Nations in Geneva, got mentored by ex-vice president of eBay. And of course, with a lot of those changes, the results came in. When it comes to admissions, I got accepted at Yale and US and at Amherst, and I chose Yale and US because it was this exciting collaboration between the Yale University of National University of Singapore. And in a year, when I was a sophomore already, I started preparing my brother for admissions. And while I was at it, I also supported 2 other students from Russia, and all 3 of them got admitted. My brother got admitted to Yale and US. They got admitted into Duke Kunshan, always very solid scholarships with full rights or very, very solid scholarships. And that's where Freshman started in 2019. As a sophomore student, I launched Freshman Academy. So a few words about Freshman since then. So since 2019, that was almost 6 years ago, Freshman alumni got admitted into Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Columbia, UPenn, Stanford, UC Berkeley, Babson, Rice, Duke, Williams, Vanderbilt, NYU, and many more. So that is not the full list, but those are some of the more notable acceptances that our students had in the past years. We have also taught 800 students at the BRAT, and later known as Top Uni Camps, which were camps funded by the government. And we taught liberal arts, we taught writing skills, we taught research there. We also provided dozens of students with financial aid at different programs that we teach, including advanced English, admissions program, full support, freshman scholars, and so on. And we find different ways to fund those programs because they're very resource consuming to teach. Also, Freshman in 2023 established a Singapore registered office, and we're starting to work with students from Singapore, from China, and we started to expand to other regions. And in general, I would say Freshman as a project has one of the strongest alumni networks potentially in the world. We tap into students studying at all of those top institutions. They know each other, they travel to each other, to each other's campuses, they establish collaborations together. So it's a very vibrant and thriving community outside of the programs that we teach. So what is the admissions program's origin story specifically? So just to give you some perspective, in 2022, I graduated from Yale and US, majoring in politics, philosophy, and economics. And at that point, I had a choice between joining a startup or building freshmen further. And the thing is that by that time, we already had students, their parents were relying on us. But there was no way that we could drop this. And at the same time, it was very clear that we needed a more structured approach to teaching some of the essential skills for admissions. And I can give you some perspective there too. We noticed in particular that students from public schools, and that was our main demographic back in the day. We worked with some of the most difficult cases, public school students with no IBs, with no APs, very, very challenging cases. So those students, they lacked writing and research skills. They also had no clue about the liberal arts system, the system that underlies Ivy League education. They did not know how to approach building their experiences outside of the classroom. And there were lots of questions that were that students had, but there was no structured approach to attending to those. So the idea of the admissions program came when we realized that you cannot solve certain things with just individual consultations and individual meetings. There are some foundational skills and knowledge base that needs to be there and needs to be taught through a structured and very clear approach of assignments, of seminars, of lectures, essentially in the same style that we learned it ourselves when we studied at top institutions. So that's the background of the admissions program. In 2022, in June, we launched the first admissions program group. We had 75 applications for the first cohort, and we selected 15 candidates. And it's important to note that those candidates, they were not in the best possible position when it comes to admissions. It's not that they had SATs 1500 plus, they had all set extracurricular activities, but there was something that was common among all of them. All of them had that genuine passion that you cannot substitute with anything. They had the spark in the eye when we talked about their interests and about their majors and about their, fields and plans. And they were very compatible with liberal arts education. And we define liberal arts compatibility with how open you are to changing your mind, to changing some of the deeply held positions that you have about, how the world works, how the relationships between people are supposed to work. Liberal arts as a system, it goes really deep into making you question a lot of things about your life. And ultimately, if that is not something that you're prepared for, liberal arts system might not be for you. And in the interview process, in the application process, out of 75 applications, we selected 15 that were not necessarily on paper the strongest ones, but they had the highest compatibility with that kind of approach and philosophy that the top universities have. So the first admissions program, and I don't take this statement lightly, I think this was the best program in terms of outcomes, at least one of the best, if not the best, in Central Asia and one of the best globally. Because ultimately, like looking back at it right now, you would not describe those outcomes as nothing less than legendary. So out of 15 students, these are some of the students that graduated from that program. And again, we're not talking about students from top private schools. We're talking about guys who started with SAT 12, 1300, guys with very limited extracurricular lists, but guys who are genuinely, the kind of people who, if we ran the admissions office, we would certainly admit them because we know deep down that they're genuinely, great people, kind people, nice people, but also, of course, they had that English background that they needed. And of course, they had some themes that they, started looking into. But again, very far from the final stages of the application process. So in that 15, list of 15 students, we had Murad, who got me into Yale. We had Ahrorbek at NYU Abu Dhabi. We had Azam, who joined USpace agency, which is the space agency in Uzbekistan. We had Shahzad on a full ride at Yansei with acceptance rate. I think that specific scholarship that he got, only 8% of accepted students get it, or something along those lines. It's extremely competitive. We have Dan at Rhodes College. We had Jasurbek, who became a Google intern or actually employee. I need to check in on that. We have Frangiz, who studies at Stanford, Miron Shoh, who goes to Duke Unshan, and Sanjar, who got admitted to Babson. All of these guys were essentially in the very first admissions program that we ran. And it's very, very important when we calculate and when we, position and share the results of the students from a particular program. It's very important to put a disclaimer here, which is that admissions program was a catalyst. It set them at the right direction, but of course, those guys achieved this all, using the discipline and grit that they had themselves. So, in no way we're claiming those cases, but it's very interesting that in such a small student group, there'll be such a concentration of talent, given that, we were not paying attention to the more surface level metrics in terms of admitting the guys. Were basically admitting people who we thought would be a great fit. And of course, admissions there's an objective element to it, but there's also, to a large extent, the subjective element to it too. And, unless you went through that system, it's very difficult to understand what that subjective thing is. Like, what are some of the things that they're paying attention to? We're trying to figure it out ourselves, to be honest. It's something that in the past, and I've been doing admissions for 8 seasons, right? Something that I know is that when you go through the liberal arts system, that experience, you can't replicate it elsewhere. You can be a great writer. You can be a great, you can be great in terms of advising people on extracurricular activities, but you need to construct a team, build a team that would breathe and feel that sort of liberal arts education. So that were the results of the very first group that we had. What were some of the questions in that very first program that we built, right? The first question, right, in building the curriculum, in the kinds of questions the student asked was, how can I gain a clear understanding of what I want to achieve, both academically and personally? When you start working with admissions program students, they give you very broad answers in terms of what they want to achieve in life. They would go something along the lines of, oh, I want to major in economics. I want to become an economist. Our job as people who graduated from those top institutions is to really press them on that statement. What exactly do you mean by saying that you want to be an economic student? What field within economics are you interested in? Is it microeconomics? Is it macroeconomics? Is it international development? Is it international trade? Is it behavioral economics? Are you interested in data, or you're interested in how consumers behave? Right? Economics is a massive field, and you need to learn how to narrow it down as much as possible and be as precise as possible. So that's the first thing that we help the guys with. And again, the nature of liberal arts education, where we as students of Yale and US and then at other top universities, we got exposed to sciences, we got exposed to social sciences, to humanities, to all sorts of fields. So for us, advising someone who does computer science and advising someone who does engineering or biology or chemistry, it's not that different. And if there are some gaps in our knowledge, then we certainly know how to ask the right questions to answer those answer those queries. The second question that we were asking in building the curriculum is, what are effective ways to build meaningful experiences and become a competitive applicant? And mind you, that group was in June. We started in June. Some of them came in saying that they want to be Forex traders, right? They want to be all sorts of things. And then a lot of them actually switched their majors quite significantly in the process of taking the program. And of course, you have very, very limited time. You have about 6 months. How to make sure that everything that you're taking up has a very high return on your time invested, right? That's the big question to ask. And what's the framework in which you should approach building your extracurricular experiences? That was the second question in the admissions program that we asked. What is the academic experience like at top universities, and am I compatible with it, right? A lot of people view the liberal arts education from the perspective of the brand that they have built, right? They look up to those top universities, including the Ivy League. They think that this is the epitome of education, and then they're perfect in every respect. That is not the case, guys. That is not the case. The Ivy League institutions have a lot of weaknesses. They have a lot of areas where they can do better. Like anything in life, they're far from perfect. And our job is to show to students what that experience is going to be like, right? And then they can decide if they want to sign up for it or they don't. And this was one of the main lessons that we wanted to teach our students. How can I produce a strong research paper and apply research skills to better understand the world? This is something that existed in the form of critical thinking. Over the years, we realized that writing a research paper is something that is almost essential in this process of preparing to top universities. And this is something that right now is a part of the admissions program. How do I write compelling narratives in motivational and supplemental essays? Narrative building is one of the most sophisticated processes ever. It's, you can't just have a template and write according to the template. And no, ChatGPT cannot help you guys there. Despite people, using it, and despite people utilizing those resources, ChatGPT eliminates your personal voice. It polishes essays so they don't sound like human. And also, ChatGPT waters down your points so that the ideas are not really dense. You read, 650-word essay, and there's not that much of density in terms of ideas there. So ChatGPT is very far from getting it. And also ChatGPT will not help you develop your own voice. If anything, you would want to avoid any AI in distinguishing yourself from everyone who's using AI and then relying on those generic metaphors. To understand why AI and ChatGPT does not work, at least yet, or maybe in the immediate future when it comes to top universities, is because ChatGPT relies on databases that produce the most common responses, right, based on large data sets. The purpose of writing is to be unique, right? And like the reason why a lot of you guys, while using ChatGPT, you have this cringy sort of overused cliche statements is because, again, it's relying on the past texts, where the idea is that to focus on yourself and focus on how would you write with all the mistakes, with all the unique perspectives, with all the quirks, with all the faults in writing, of course, to a certain extent, right? But this is something that is extremely challenging. And as a part of the admissions program, by the way, you cannot use AI tools because you cannot outsource your thinking to AI. And the last one, which is very important too, is how can I craft arguments and insights that not only reflect who I am, but also leave a strong impression on admissions officers, right? A lot of the statements, guys, that you make when you write and produce essays are very basic, they're naive, and they're not up to the standard of Ivy League institutions. Oftentimes, they're very critical. Students, at the baseline, they criticize everything, their government, their society, people around them, their parents. But a lot of that criticism is not fair. It's very biased. It's egocentric. And you definitely want to do better in terms of presenting better arguments when it comes to your motivational essays and supplemental essays. And having a third person who would be able, a third person perspective is essential in refining those arguments, right? So when people join, they would start with something like, oh, the educational system in my country sucks. It's really bad. And then we'll look into the GDP per capita in their country and the fact that their country has free education in the first place. And suddenly they realize that the fact that they have free educational system is nothing short of a miracle, right? So this is just one of many, many examples where we push back and push students to have compelling arguments on that ID level. By the way, fun fact, all the photos of campuses that you will see today in this presentation, there's at least one freshman student who got admitted in there. So a little bit of a flex from the freshman team, I guess. So what are the deliverables of the program, right? So I gave you a little bit of some of the directions and some of the questions that we were thinking about in designing this program. But it's important to understand that since that first admissions program, since 2022, we launched admissions programs every year, and we improved the curriculum. We made the experience more structured. We made the experience more nuanced. And we also trained new team members to ensure that transformative experience that the first cohort had. And more than anything, right now, we look back at our roots of the first cohort, and we ask ourselves, what did we do there that, of course, there's structure, there are systems, there are curriculums, but there's also this like almost soul, I want to say. There's something about the admissions process that you cannot replicate, something that you either have or you don't have, right? That compatibility with that educational system, for example. It's very difficult to force it. It's either that the student arrives at it themselves, or it's very, very difficult to do it. So there are a lot of things and a lot of questions that we try to figure out as we continue refining the program. But nonetheless, as you can imagine, when you approach anything with an open mind and with a system to study it, an admissions process is so sophisticated and so complicated. We continue learning about it, even in my case, after 8 admission seasons. Of course, there are so many things that we got right and we could pinpoint. So what are the things that are included in the admissions program? So first of all, that curriculum that we're constantly refining. We had 3 programs that we launched this year. If you compare the February program and the program that we have right now, there are some refinements, and we constantly will do refinements. And we will organize additional seminars to, for the admissions programs after it ends, so that we pinpoint those nuances as we learn about the admissions process. Overall, you will get about 40 hours of classes, lectures, and seminars. You will also get more than 15 hours of one-on-one meetings. And those one-on-one meetings will be with a very diverse team, and I will introduce the team later. You will also write about 25,000 words of reflections, of motivational essay drafts, of supplemental essay drafts, and you will receive feedback on those submissions. And also we'll bring in some freshman case studies. There are so many cases and there are so many unique experiences that we have witnessed with our students in the past years. And this is something that is integrated into the curriculum and integrated into the admissions program. Also, to a lot of the students, especially if you're building critical thinking, I would personally recommend you to take Advanced English program. Advanced English program was finished by 5 Ivy League students. And this is the program that we put so much soul and so much excitement into, because that program gives you a sense of what the Ivy League education and studying at top universities feels like. So absolutely do check out this program. That program is recommended, but it's an optional component of the admissions program if you choose to enroll into it. So who are the team members? One of the key team members that we have, the key team member is Dr. Ruhshona. She is a very beloved mentor in this program, and she is a university professor. She did both masters and PhDs. She has helped freshman students with their applications for the past 3 years. She knows the region really well. She worked with international students. She was born in Armenia. She moved to the US. Now she's based in Brazil and moving between US and Brazil. A person with a ton of experience. A person who is very sensitive to students and then supportive of students. So if I am more of a bad policeman, Ruhshona is a good policeman, right? Ruhshona is the one who will support you and provide that emotional support. But she's also very fair. If you don't do well, she will also be, criticizing you relentlessly. With me, I'm, very known for being very straightforward with my feedback. And that's ultimately is coming from my background where, I had to figure out a lot of things on my own. I know what it takes to study at those institutions. And I know that the goal of getting admitted, the goal of the admissions field should not be just to get admitted, but what you do after, what you do with that kind of education. Siega, who graduated from Yale and US, majoring in history and minoring in arts, is another beloved. And again, in contrast with me, like people, like I would say students in general, before meeting me, you will feel a little bit of that tension because I will be, but Dr. Ruhshona and Siega, they balance my approach really well because they would give you very, constructive feedback, but in a mild way. They're very, again, very, very sensitive with student feedback. And so Sega will be conducting consultations. If Dr. Ruhshona will be leading lectures and having consultations with you on research papers, Sega will meet you in between, but we'll get back to that later. We also have, so just a little bit on my background, I studied philosophy, economics, and politics, but also I did a grand strategy program at Yale University, where every week we would write something like 2,000 words of research components, and in a month we would produce a research paper. I did that program in the very first year at Yale and US, and in the past years I've mentored quite a few students, many of whom ended up in top universities. Same can be said about Dr. Ruhshona and Sega. The next person who was very instrumental in building the curriculum of the admissions program is Michael. Michael will not be teaching in summer, but she was one of the masterminds of the admissions program curriculum this year. She majored in anthropology and global affairs, and she also studied at Cambridge. And she swam for Pakistan national team, swimming team. And we also have a teacher's assistant, Ruhshona. So Ruhshona is a graduate of the admissions program, and she produced a research as part of the admissions program on labor migration. So a person with a ton of experience, and a person from whom we'll be hearing today, and we'll learn more about her experiences. So those are some of the core people. However, the admissions team at Freshman is growing. We're hiring more people in Singapore, but whoever we bring in, they would be highly prepared for this job. They would be trained, and they would come from as you can see, all but one of the team members, Ruhshona, and Ruhshona is a teacher's assistant. We graduated from at least a bachelor's program, and this is essential in advising people on the 4 years of their life, right? In general, as a part of the program, and something that's worth mentioning, you cannot teach admissions for at least 4 years after you graduate from the admissions program. The reason why we have this is because a lot of the students who graduate, they see how relatively easy it is for us to give feedback, and then they assume that they themselves can teach admissions. Unfortunately, it's not the case. It's a huge responsibility. At Freshman, we see preparation for admissions as something that has the same level of responsibility as being a doctor or lawyer. You're essentially determining the next 4 years of someone's life. It's extremely, high impact, and it's a big responsibility. So we decided, in working with most of the cases, that we have people who either know so much about admissions process and then they worked all the way at Freshman, or people who graduated from a bachelor's program. So the curriculum itself, it has roughly 5 components. The first component is experiencing the Ivy League. We'll be talking about top university education. How is it structured? What are the resources available at top universities? What is the philosophy and ideology that underlies education at the top universities? The second part of the curriculum is excelling in extracurricular activities. So here, like I said, we learned to prepare students in very short time frames. So there are some frameworks, there are some perspectives on how to build your extracurriculars. And again, it's not some form of a tick the box list, right? Or some form of a template. It's much deeper than that. And we hope to give students maturity and understanding and nuance that would go beyond the tick the box approach. We also teach building your narrative, and you will write about 2,000 words of reflections, of assignments, and I'll give you a sample assignment later. But we teach you both the theoretical part and the practical aspects of producing compelling writing. And again, you cannot use ChatGPT or other AI tools, so you will be forced to write yourself and understand writing. And arguably, you can only use ChatGPT tools if you know writing in the first place. If you can differentiate where the writing is very generic and cliche and cringy, and where it's actually good. In my work in the previous years, I did, and I do use ChatGPT, but in vastly different ways compared to how students starting it use it. Typically, students who don't know how to write, they approach ChatGPT with their draft and they basically ask it, can you improve it? That's one way of using it. And that's completely not optimal way, a way that we ban at the admissions program. If you're using ChatGPT to source some books that are similar to your narrative, to test some ideas and arguments that you're making, and you would still reject 80% of what ChatGPT will tell you. You would still reject a bunch of the recommendations that it would give you, but it's that 20% or maybe 10%. But the problem is that you would not be able to know that 10% if you don't know the writing in the first place. And thus we ban that. We ban ChatGPT. You need to know what good writing, what good arguments look like before you can utilize ChatGPT on a very high level. Other than that, you might result in producing very generic text. Gaining research skills. Research and evidence-based approach are essential in the admissions and in your preparation for top universities. You need to approach questions in your life, not through just personal narrative perspective, or somebody said this and somebody said that. You need to have a system of how you think, how you derive ideas, how you compare ideas, how you evaluate arguments. And this is ultimately what that section of the program is supposed to attend to. And then putting the application together. There are supplemental essays, there are interviews. You need to request your teachers recommendation letters, and that is a massive problem. Recommendation letters is a problem, and we know it because we work with all sorts of students. We work with students who come from village areas where teachers don't even have emails. We work with students who go to UWC or presidential schools or Nazarbayev intellectual schools or other top schools globally. And then with recommendation letters, they use brag sheets, for example. So, they have some institutional approaches how to tackle that. All of those things put together is something that we tackle at the admissions program. So I told you that you will get assignments, and assignments is a big part of that structured approach that we're building at the admissions program. And what do the assignments look like? So here's a sample one. Assignments are typically much bigger and much more detailed. I basically constructed a similar assignment to what you will get. First of all, you'll get a reading or a podcast or a movie or something where you will need to engage with some ideas and some texts that are sophisticated. Then you will have some reflections that will specifically target, and some tasks. Some of them will be related to that reading, and some of them won't be. One example, don't send your kid to the Ivy League by William Dershowitz, right? So actually, this is an article. So we'll attach this article, and then we'll ask you, is the Ivy League actually producing excellent sheep, obedient high achievers who lack purpose and originality? As much as we put the Ivy League at a pedestal, at the admissions program, we show you in reality what that experience is looking like, with all the good and the bad, right? And this is one of the topics that we cover in the admissions program. We will also ask you in the assignment to fill in your list of extracurricular activities in as detailed way as possible, and we'll provide you a sample where you can input that. Then we can also ask you to replicate why Yale, which is a famous supplemental question that Yale asks, and substitute Yale with any university that you're interested in, and then provide compelling evidence to support your response. It's important that in providing you this homework, we will also have, by that time, we'll cover how to approach that assignment in the seminar or in a lecture. So, and then you will meet some of the team members to discuss your responses. So you will have your homework checked by Ruhshona first, and then you will meet some of the team members to discuss your performance one-on-one. So a simple schedule for the admissions program would look something along those lines. So in your first week, you will on Wednesday get an assignment for your lecture and seminar. Your lectures will be on Saturdays, as you can see. It's 2.5 hours. And let's say the first lecture will be on extracurricular activities, right? Then on Tuesday, your homework will be reviewed. On Wednesday, you will have your seminar. On Friday, you will have a consultation with a junior team member to review your assignments. And on Saturday, you will have another lecture, but this time, and this is a typo here, not on extracurricular activities, on a different topic. And your seminar assignments will be reviewed and sent back to you. And on Sunday or on Saturday, you will have a consultation with a senior team member, with me or with Luciana, where we will be reviewing some more strategic decisions and strategic questions, such as your ECs, your motivational essays, and etc. So an average 2-3 weeks would look approximately like this. You will get assignments, you will have one-on-one meetings, you will have lectures, you will have seminars. And again, the benefit of joining the program is that we're doing this for 3 years. So of course, you can always do better and you can always improve things, but the system is more or less. And another important aspect of this whole process is that that system would not work without the team that we've built, without people who actually graduated from bachelor's programs, without people who do this work full time, who focus on essays and supplementals as their profession. They would want to elevate their skills on that level. It's extremely important. You cannot put a bunch of high schoolers and make them do that kind of work, regardless of where those high schoolers ended up in, which universities. So how do the logistics look like? First of all, we use Google Classroom, where you will receive your assignments, and we'll also use extensively Google Documents. So all of you will have your folder on Google Docs, where all program-related files will be added. Your resumes, your EC list, like all the essays, all the assignments. And the team members will have access, only you and the team members will have access to it. We'll also have one Telegram group for all program-related communications. And we'll have another group on alumni Telegram group where you will communicate with alumni, including people at Harvard, at Yale, and so on. And you will collaborate and communicate with them there. And there's also a Zoom platform where most of the meetings are happening. Our students are based in different parts of the world. So Zoom is the easiest way to make it happen. Also, we want to share, and guys, I'm seeing your questions. I will attend to them at the end. So some of the reviews, we collect surveys from students anonymously from program to program. And this is the review of the February cohort. We surveyed 15 students anonymously. So they could have put anything they wanted, would never know who said what. We asked a question, would you recommend to the program to your friends? And then 100% of February cohort students said yes, both in the survey at the beginning of the program, at let's say 3-4 weeks of the program, and at the end of the program. The average rating for how the program met student expectations was 4.65. And the rating for the admissions program mentorship team overall on average was 4.6, with the highest level, highest rating achieved by Dr. Luciana was 4.9, right? So this is something that we track. Of course, those numbers, they are not comprehensive. They don't show the full picture, but they definitely show something about the admissions program. And also a little bit of on the student feedback. We discussed the structure. We discussed what are the questions that we're covering. We discussed more or less how the schedule is looking like. And these are some of the messages that we received from students. We received a lot more. We'll slowly post them on Freshman Academy channels. At Freshman, I practiced writing a lot. I received valuable feedback to correct mistakes and write more precisely and immersively. I always see Mr. Valera saying, you're supposed to write when I close my eyes. Okay, this is a little bit dramatic. We don't want you to haunt you in your dreams. But again, especially with me, like I said, our job is to push you to your limits, guys. And that's I guess, is the byproduct of that. Another student is writing, the admissions program was really helpful. Seminars lectures were engaging and lively. And Dr. Luciana did more than expected. I held extra office hours and gave so much time reviewing our research papers. Consultations I had with Mr. Sega were honestly the best. He didn't give straight ideas, but asked questions that helped me think deeper and find my own ideas. Mr. Valera was great too, though I wish he checked his DMs more often. So talking about my DMs, it's still a problem, but I actually created a separate folder for all the students on Telegram. And if before I might have missed your message and then replied in 5 days, sometimes a week, Right now, I'm trying to clear all messages, ideally within 24 hours or within 48 hours. Some people who I did not add into the group, unfortunately, sometimes they wait till I add them, and I potentially might have missed their message. But you also just give me a little bit of a excuse here, given that I receive a ton of messages daily. I'm doing my best. Sometimes it takes hours to respond to everyone, but yeah. So that's the student feedback. And just one more comment. I have nothing to tell apart from praising this course. Not only I was accepted with zero admissions knowledge, by the way, that happens rarely with the admissions program. This particular student, the reason why we admitted him with zero knowledge is because his entire family has a whole history of being taught by my family. So his mom was taught by my grandmother and by my mother. And I thought that, and his application was good, but also that legacy is something that and he's also very compatible with some education abroad. So we decided to give a chance, and he did phenomenally, that student, in the program. I could not imagine at such a stage of my life, I gained new friends, or I boosted it to a level, even though some of my classmates are nerdish, but overall I love them all and not know how I'm going to live without this routine when course will be over. The course kind of pushes you in the intensive fashion to produce stuff, to produce writing, to achieve results in ECs and beyond. So it's understandable. Also, noteworthy seminars were great. I once read that if lessons are not mixed with jokes and some stories, a student would not gain much info. Anyways, expectations were definitely met, if not exceeded. And again, it's important to understand that not everyone gets the perfect experience in the admissions program. There are some students who, for many different reasons, they realize that education is not compatible with them. They might have not liked the fact that there are so many assignments, or the fact that maybe there are not enough of assignments. You cannot, we understand that we can't build a perfect program, but at least something that you should keep in mind is that we are committed to making it as great of an experience for students and for teachers, for everyone involved, as possible. And the feedback that you're seeing, the rating, right? Also for you to, I guess, study data analysis, one of the basic principles. When you're seeing 4.6, a lot of people put 5s, but also some people might have put 4s. So it gives you a general sense. But of course, there are a range of experiences. Our job is that when we admit you to the admissions program, we have the highest confidence that you would enjoy the program, because we think that you're compatible with the approach. You think you're compatible with the liberal arts education, with the whole philosophy of how freshman approaches admissions. And the way we approach admissions is, we don't want to just get admitted. We want you to succeed beyond your acceptance. That's the whole philosophy that we have adopted in the past years. All right, Ruhshona must be here somewhere in the participants group. Ruhshona, can you send me a plus if you can hear me now? And I will attempt to add Ruhshona into, okay, let me see. Okay, here. Guys, I'm seeing your questions. I will respond to your questions. I will respond to your questions at the end of the program, at the end of the webinar. Okay. Ruhshona Sabirova, allowed to talk. Let's see if Ruhshona.
Hi. Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, awesome. So,
Awesome. Yeah,
is it okay? Like, I don't know if I can switch on my camera because I don't see that option here.
Oh, wait, let me, this name. Okay, let me quickly, give me a minute to fix that. Guys, the way how Zoom is so sophisticated, Zoom webinars, like all of you who probably used it, I think the vast majority of you have not used it before, but I guarantee you this is one of the most, yeah. Ruhshona, I don't think I can actually, have you switch on your camera. Maybe we'll do
Oh, all right.
yeah,
I mean, it's
that
fine.
works. I'm very sorry.
Yeah, that works too, actually. Yeah. So,
Uh,
hey everyone, I am Ruhshona Sapirova. I recently got into University of Pennsylvania, and I'm actually a graduate of admissions program 2024. And um, I've been a teacher assistant in this program before I leave for my studies in fall for Penn. So yeah, today I would actually like to cover some of the essential, questions that would help you understand and kind of like help you understand more or less like admissions program from my perspective, how it helped me boost my application, and also actually share some of my like personal experience with admissions program. So the first thing, like my main takeaways and lessons from the admissions program was that, like, first of all, admissions program in a way helped me frame my background and passions authentically, and also like it was an integral part in helping me write the essays that show the admissions officers my unique voice and story. And that's like and that covers like a lot of things, but without it, like I'm not gonna get into like too many details, but also one of the main takeaways from admissions program was that even though you have the full package in application, like you have the stats there, like you have even though you have enough of like you have high SATs, you have good extracurricular activities and everything, you might not be able to get in if you don't know how to present your story to the admissions officers in the right way. So it's not just about doing the things that are necessary to do, but it's also about like knowing how to strategically plan your application and like take everything together and show the admissions officers your story. So it's also more about like knowing how to present your story rather than just, having everything, like having that full package in your application.
yeah.
And
Sean,
I
just
think like,
maybe just
uh-huh.
a quick point here too. The presentation of the story, the rigor of that presentation, of the arguments that you're presenting, that third person perspective, like I mentioned before, to what extent you would say we pushed back on some of the maybe statements that you were making in supplemental essays, and how did that process look like when you would make a statement or you would make arguments in your motivational essay or supplemental essay, and what is the process of refining it?
So it's like, for example, I mean, we would actually, you could actually have some of the drafts of your supplementals throughout the program actually. And whenever I would come with certain like drafts or like ideas, I might not have like, d dived like deeper into them, or just, state a general statement, or just like, say that I did this or like did that. But when during the consultations with the team, like Dr. Luciana or like Valera, sometimes we would actually get like deeper into them, like and more of like whenever I would come with like general statements, the mentors would help me kind of like get deeper into my reflections, like
Yeah, and that
way.
process of getting deeper into them is essentially asking the right questions. This is about asking the right questions. Um, it's interesting that over the years, I'm seeing a tendency that students more and more um, bring in general statements, such as, oh, my main takeaway from my motivational essay is that you should never give up. Or my main
Yeah.
takeaway is that with discipline and grit, you can achieve everything in life. And then one of the tests that we use in understanding if you arrived at the deep enough takeaway is asking, oh, if a Harvard admissions officer reads this, right? And again, we use Harvard for an example here. Would they go, oh, we cannot not admit this person. We must admit them, right? Because this is such a unique and deep idea. The way you tackle that, right? Because you start with, oh, we must never give up, is by asking yourself, what do you mean by different terms? That's number one, being very clear on the terms that you use. And also considering the counter arguments. For example, you say that you should never give up. Give me an example where you should give up. For example, You try to do something again and again, and it's very, very clear that it doesn't make sense logically for you to pursue that path. And pursuing that path might not seem productive. So maybe you can adjust your course at that point. And then a student learns to consider counter arguments and learns to use words such as, oh, everyone needs to do in the same, do something. But the word everyone is a categorical statement. Surely someone should not follow that advice. Who is that someone? Through that Socratic questioning, I would almost argue that Socratic method is the method that we use with freshmen. We arrive at more structured arguments. Yeah. Anything to add here, Roshan?
Yeah, so I think like the actually another thing I would also want to mention is that I forgot to mention it earlier is like what if you decide to take this path of like applying to top US universities, another thing that actually shows also like maturity, which is very, very valued in the eyes of admissions officers, is like having being ready basically for everything. Like, you could do everything the right way and but you should still, be ready to get rejected, from almost all of the universities, almost all of the competitive US universities that you apply for, because there are like so many things that you cannot control. And even if you do like everything the right way, you can still get rejected. And you should, and my advice here would be like, and what Valera would actually always recommend to us during even like lessons and consultations is like always do start also researching plan Bs, like universities in Europe or like South Korea and other countries like that also have like very, very like good universities where you can study. So so the main actually takeaway and point that I'm making here is like um always like going fullest, like I mean doing everything to the fullest of the ability, performing as hard as possible, like doing your best, but expecting and being ready for the worst and always having plan Bs.
That's a very, very good point. And that resilience often comes with the acceptance that you might get rejected from every university that you will apply for. And that advice primarily goes to the public school, the international public school students who aim for full rights. And I can speak for the Central Asian countries. From all the Central Asian countries, there are probably 50 to 60 full rights students every year from all the countries. And to get admitted anywhere with a full ride is a massive achievement, which also means that all the hundreds and thousands of students who apply, a lot of them are bound to be rejected because just the numbers are stacked against them, right? So if you do admissions, be prepared to get rejected. If you're a US citizen, a freshman has a 100% acceptance rate into top universities for US citizens and for students who don't ask for financial aid. If you're coming from those two groups, you are not applying for financial aid and you're a US citizen, or both, you're very, very well positioned. And because we worked with international students from underprivileged backgrounds, we know what it takes to prepare someone on that level. Every time we start working with students who are better positioned, we find that it's easier. So as an international student applying for financial aid, brace yourselves, guys, because that path might not work out just because of how the numbers are stacked against you. Ruhshona, another question that I wanted to discuss with you is, who would you recommend applying for the admissions program? Students from which grades, students from which backgrounds? So one thing that we discovered is that it's students who are ready to get rejected, which is fair.
Yeah.
It's a competitive process, but anything else?
So first of all, I think like any public school students, like local public school students, or maybe even graduates who are in a gap year, I think should apply for admissions program because like something that we are not taught, and I do come from a public school too, and I can speak on the behalf of like that background is because like something that we're not in public schools is like how to do like how to do reflective writing and how to like actually improve. And that program, admissions program, could help in the way of like refining and actually improving writing and research skills. And this is something we public school students are not taught. And something else I would add here is like students. So that first category, public school students, is the first thing, and secondly, like students from any background who have very good stats, like who are very good statistics wise, like academics wise, I would say like strong SATs, like high SAT scores or IELTS, and but are not there with extracurricular activities or like still exploring their passions. I think admissions program would really, really help in a way of like exploring themselves further through like through writing thousands of words of reflections weekly. And and that would like really, really help in first of all improving the writing skills, and then secondly, like exploring different parts of your identity through reflections and getting like individual feedback on your writing. And what else? So I think like mainly for writing and research skills, that goes without saying that admissions program would really, really boost, I think, research and writing skills. And also with my experience, like personal experience, that's something that really helped and played an integral, instrumental, like something that played a huge role in my application was also like a research paper that I wrote with Dr. Lucena throughout the program, and that also I think that is something
Yeah.
that's like worth adding. Yeah.
Ruhshona, thank you so much. And I really like how you brought up a group of students with high SAT and IELTS scores. I would argue that some of the weakest applications that I've seen came from that group because people invested so much time in the academic front. But unfortunately, as many of you know, the academics is just there to pass to the next stage. You're never admitted because you have high SAT, but you can be rejected if you have a low SAT. So people invested so much time in the on the SAT front that they forget that they're never admitted because of their SAT score, and they will be admitted for extracurriculars for their ideas for writing and for essays, and that has been a big challenge. So if you invested a ton of time on the SAT front, you have high SAT score, but your writing is lacking, your ECs are lacking. Quite a few students in the admissions program are coming from that kind of background. Also, would say an underexplored group of students would be ninth graders. If you're a very strong ninth grader and you do admissions program, by the time you graduate, you will know so much. Like it will give you such a competitive advantage compared to everyone else that I would definitely recommend if you have some younger brothers, sisters with SAT 1200 and above, do send them our way. We'll interview them. We'll see if they're well positioned to take the most out of the program. Something that freshman is known for is that if we don't think you need the program, we would not recommend you the program. So enrolling in the consultation would be a good first step in understanding how compatible you are with our approach. All right, so one more thing, Ruhshona, and you just joined the admissions program as a teacher's assistant, and you will work essentially before you leave, for college, as a 2 months internship. You witness some of the admissions program work as a person who turned from a student to the other side of that work. Did any of your views or positions change about the admissions program? Any
I think it,
nuances? Any
yeah, it happened like,
yeah. I mean, it just started, but maybe yeah.
yeah, so it hasn't changed like, very drastically. But I would say like if as a participant, I mean as a student of admissions program, I would like focus on my journey, like in the own journey individually. Right now, I kind of like as a teacher assistant, I kind of like see the overall picture and also like know behind the scenes work, how much, individual care and effort goes into building the entire curriculum, building it, and not just building, but building it thoughtfully in a way that students get the most out of it, and kind of like support and individual, again, like individual support that goes into each student. And yeah,
Thank you.
just not, yeah, saying all of this, like, and how it all carefully is planned in a way that it kind of like students do take the most out of it. Like,
Yeah. And again, this is something that I would add. Not everything is perfect. We aim for perfection, and we're fully aware that. But I would argue that the way the admissions program is built um, in these cohorts is as close as I imagined it to be when we launched it in the first year. It's structured. It has a team of about 5 people working with you. Um, and it has a system where it improves consistently. So yeah, thank you for sharing. And also, Ruhshona, one more thing. After the admissions program, you took a package of individual consultations to finalize, right? You had some drafts in research, you had motivational essay draft, you had supplemental drafts, and then you met the team. You worked with Sega, you worked with Sanjar to finalize and bounce back ideas and to run those final edits. Is it something that you would recommend to everyone? And is it something that some people, yeah, what's your, or at least what was your rationale when you did it, and tell us more about it.
So I think if a student so basically, students who are ready, and an admissions program takes students when we are sure that the student will take the most out of it, and then the student will enjoy the program, right? So after that stage, I think if the student takes the most out of the program, it could lay a very strong foundation in the application, which was actually the case with me. So I had my supplemental essay drafts, my personal statement draft, and draft of my research paper by the time I graduated from admissions program, and working on it like in summer, and then polishing it like by the end of I think summer. A series of consultations really helped me to further polish my essays, and then like a research paper and everything. So I would say like if the student really takes the most out of the program, and I what do I mean by that thing to the best of your ability, and you could actually have the drafts of some of your essays ready by the time you graduate the program. And with a series of like consultations, you can actually make it to a very good stage with your application. And that is something I think I would share. But of course, not every student, not all students would be well positioned in terms of their application by the time they graduate, but it depends like case by case. But if you take the most, as long as you take the most out of the program, you could be like well positioned in terms of application, and then you could just do a sort of like flexible full support thing, which I did, like which is like taking a few consultations with the team members who are Dr. Lucena, Sega, Valera, and then that could actually be enough for the application, to submit your application.
Great point, and thank you for sharing, Roshan. I absolutely agree. We have a range of outcomes by the end of the program. Some people like Ruhshona are very well positioned, and some students, they join with writing skills that are not as advanced, so they need more time. So also within the program, some students join with their application having that much potential, but because they did not deliver in the program, they don't perform as well as people who maybe did not join with very good cards, but then in the end, they compensated with disciplined and consistent work. So by the end of the admissions program, the outcomes are different. Some people applied directly even without consultations, notably Ahrorbek. who got admitted into NYU Abu Dhabi, he essentially wrote his college essay with a few additions as a part of the admissions program after. We sometimes meet students after. And then he applied with that, he got admitted. We have someone like Ruhshona who did separate consultations, and Bihruz, who got admitted into NYU Abu Dhabi as well. We have someone like Parviz also who got admitted to Kobe and NYU Abu Dhabi who did this separate consults after, but very, very minimal ones. And we have someone like Murad who did admissions program and full support. And the common argument against admissions program is that, oh, you should take full support. The problem is with the name full support, the word full support. People assume that we're sort of carrying people towards admission, but full support is for people who a lot of the questions that I mentioned before, they know answers to them and they just need to package their application, right? They have solid extracurricular activities. They have academics figured out. They understand why they need liberal arts, and they need to put their application together. That is why you would need a full support program. So, and also full support program, because it's all one-on-one work, there's no structured element to it. It is, it is more expensive. But for the same price, you could do admissions program and separate consultations, and you could get the best from both worlds. You could get the structured approach of the admissions program, and you could have a bunch of consultations. And we have massive discounts for students who graduated from admissions program, so that we continue working with students all the way till the admissions deadlines. And yeah, I think that should be it for the admissions program webinar and most of the points that we needed to cover. Ruhshona, would you want to stay to go through some of the questions that students might have? And maybe wrap up in the next 10, 15 minutes?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Guys, again, thank you so much for joining and being a part of this. Like I said, it's admission season for a lot of you. And the fact that you joined is something that we hold very, very dear. And I hope that today gave you a clearer sense, or at least a clearer sense of what the admissions program is all about, and the structure and the platforms and deliverables and the story behind the admissions program. Summer is coming up. June cohort, it's the one that we started. We started the legendary one in 2022 in June too. So certainly you can do a lot, starting in June. So yeah, do apply. Don't use AI in applying. That would be my big advice, because that would allow us to also understand your skill sets. And if we suspect AI, we might not even consider you. Yes, let's start looking through the questions. The first question, why did you choose Yale and US, not just NUS, and what's the difference between them? So something to mention, guys, is that Yale and US as a program, for many different reasons, it was discontinued in 2025. I will be at the graduation of the last cohort of Yale and US students, and arguably it got discontinued. And there are many articles and papers written about this. It got discontinued because it was a successful project, not because it was not a successful project. We can probably run a different seminar on that, but I applied to Yale and then I got admitted to Yale and US. So I had a choice between Yale and US and Amherst. But as someone who knows NUS and US and Yale, I don't even know what I would choose if I had an option to go to either of the three. NUS is a lot more research-based. It's a lot nerdier, but it also the kind of education that's more professional and more industrial. Yale is very, free and crazy in all senses of that word. But Yale is also, it gives me a sense that it's very focused on the United States, right? Because most of the students are from the US, and it's understandably so. Most of the professors are US professors. Yale and US was a golden middle in between. It had 50% of international students. It was very international in terms of professors, and studying political science, we did not just get exposed to it from the US perspectives, but also from global perspectives. And that is a huge advantage that I think we have. And also it was much more academically rigorous than Yale in many ways. And I know this because a lot of students who went to Yale from Yale and US, they did tremendously well by not putting as much effort. So I guess that's the NUS influence. So it's unfortunate that that project got closed. but it is what it is. I guess we are the limited edition that is left. Does freshmen offer financial aid for students? So we do have financial aid. Obviously, to qualify for financial aid, you need to first of all be a good fit for the program, and also you need to have a compelling application so that, yeah, we also give advantage to students who are coming from different geographies. So if you're coming from non-Central Asia, or if you're coming from other parts of the world, the reason why we give priority when it comes to that kind of support is that all the students who are more represented as freshmen benefit from it. If you're coming from a different geography, you're bringing a special kind of experience to admissions program, and it's the kind of experience that will benefit everyone involved. So, but again, we had students from Central Asia who got on co-op. We had students outside of Central Asia. So that's one of the factors that we consider. Okay, we move on. Can you name factors for winning scholarship or accepting a top ranked universities? Ruhshona, maybe I direct this question to you. What do you think is, maybe in your case, Sivan, what do you think something that stood out in your application?
Yeah, so I think there isn't unless you view the admissions file when you go to college, you don't know for sure what is something you got admitted for, and also like this is very holistic approach, which means that everything is taken into consideration, starting from your SAT score. Up to your like personal qualities and values which are evident throughout your essays and throughout the recommendation letters that your teachers write. But I think in my application, something that I personally think stood out the most is probably the essays, because and also, again, I cannot actually mention one thing here because like everything together, uh, I would say played out very well. It's like the essays. I would say the essays that I wrote were the main part of my application, but I could also say that uh, because because the topic of my research paper was also stemming from my actually like story, stemming from my story and out of genuine passion, that could also like play out really well. And it could also be some of my extracurricular activities. So I wouldn't say there is like one
Something.
specific
Yeah.
saying,
Ruhshona, I would
something.
say from a third person perspective, I think the story that you brought on the table, it is something that you cannot come up with. It's so genuine and it's so unique. And this is something also that is outside of your control to a large extent too. But it's something that you needed to discover and polish. So you always had that
Yeah.
story, but you needed to kind of arrive at it and recognize that it was so interesting and so unique, and communicate it in the most effective way, which you did perfectly well. So it was a combination of things where it was your positioning that was outside of your control, but everyone has those advantages in some way, and the fact how you use them in creating a very compelling application. But that's on the narrative side, and then of course extracurriculars and what you've done with like innovation. So yes, there's no one reason why you get admitted. Typically, you have a billion reasons also why you get rejected. But yeah, thank you for your question, and thank you for Roshan for your answer. Okay, a few
Mhm.
more questions, guys, and for the rest of you, we have a group in on Telegram for the webinar. And if you have any follow-up questions that were not answered, please post there. In Singapore right now, it's 10:20 p.m. So unfortunately, I'm hitting my bed right after we wrap up here. But I will try to get back to all of you tomorrow, guys, with those who ask your questions. Divyata Verma is asking, what would you suggest for universities for the Russell Group in the UK? I aspire to study law and European law at the universities like Oxford, Cambridge, and King's College. So there are a couple of, and this is a great question. So, and I think UK will be more and more appealing as the United States seem to go through that transitional period with regards to international students. And a lot of things seem to be in a flux, and very few people know what's going to happen in the next years. So UK education will become increasingly more appealing. So with Oxford and Cambridge, there are much fewer financial aid options. So if you're applying for a scholarship, it's extremely difficult. And it seems that the writing process, it doesn't need to be that personal and individualized as for American education. Those are very different systems. So if you're applying for UK, the program that we're doing right now can help you in terms of being more clear about your university major choices and so on and so forth, and understanding how the differences between the American education and the UK education. But the UK education is very distinct. And it's the one from the experiences that I didn't have personally, but from students in the freshman team, including Sanjar. Yeah, it seems like, oh, Sanjar is actually saying that he can answer the UK question. Sanjar, do you want to? And Sanjar is one of those students in that initial cohort who right now works at freshman in different projects. Sanjar, do you want to? Okay, let me unmute you. And Sanjar helped someone this year get admitted into Cambridge. So Sanjar, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah. Go ahead, Sanjar.
Yep, awesome. Hi. Hey guys. So I'm at the airport right now going back to Uzbekistan. I just jumped in because I saw this on Instagram that I might as well join. Essentially, okay, so with the UK, just to give you like a perspective on it, uh, the UK is very, very different from the US and it has its ups and downs, but I literally kind of covered most of the fundamental ones. The main point with the UK is the cost. So if you go to the UK, price, obviously there's no financial aid, there are virtually no scholarships, so you would have to pay. However, the education is very different from the US. So in the UK, let's say if you study law, the good thing is that you will only be studying law and you will have a very, very sort of maybe a little bit more closer to something like NUS, as Valero was explaining. You will have a very sort of like almost pragmatic education where you will be kind of hyper focused, laser focused onto law, or like I guess that's what you were looking for. Cambridge, Oxbridge, it's mostly about grades. Typically, with when it comes to Oxbridge, Cambridge, those schools are like a different level. And by the way, guys, remember, Russell groups are they're kind of the equivalent of Ivy Leagues, but also it's much, much more broader than the Ivy Leagues. So let's say, whereas the Ivy Leagues are generally all like at the same level with like certain schools, kind of like you could argue are like a little bit more prestigious than others. Uh, the Russell Group is much, much broader. It's like I think it's around 30 plus schools. So yeah, basically just to give you a summary, uh, for Russell Groups, aside from Oxbridge, that being Oxford and Cambridge, it's 70% your grades. If you can get A levels, IB, in certain cases they also accept APs, as long as you pass their minimum grade boundaries and you have a decent personal statement, which is like not a story but more or less just about your activities, you'll be fine. It's not incredibly difficult to get in. It's very difficult when it comes to the top Russell groups. That's like uh, well, not Russell groups. Let's say Oxford, Cambridge. So like Cambridge or Oxford, a place like UCL. Those places, everyone has the grades. So not only do you need the grades, you also need very good experiences with like basically extracurriculars. You need like good justification, good motivation behind going. Basically, the UK is all about. It's very pragmatic. It's very like whatever you choose to study, that's just what you'll study. That's all you'll study. And in admissions, it's kind of reflected. They just want to see that you did well in school. Specifically, if you want to apply to the UK, you do need to have APs, A levels, or IB. If you don't have those, you have to do a foundation year. That's a whole other thing. And yeah, if you just have the grades, you will mostly be fine. But when it comes to like schools like Cambridge and Oxford, and some of like the other top Russell groups, then you will already like need a lot more, let's say, extracurriculars and a very, very directed personal, like motivational letter. I wouldn't even call it personal statement, just because a personal statement in the US is all about your story, it's about conveying your personality, those type of things. Whereas in the UK, it's much more just about, okay, why do you want to study here? Why do you want to study this thing, like this subject?
It actually can be a lot more structured than college essays in the US. There was this famous case when a
Yeah,
guy
absolutely.
wrote Black Lives Matter 100 times and got admitted into Stanford, right? And I'm sure that there was
Oh
some
yeah, yeah.
steps to it, and that he probably is an activist himself. And then like it's the story doesn't just end there. There's a lot under it, but unlikely something like this would happen I would say almost impossible that something like this would happen, because the value is not on the personality necessarily, but on your extracurricular experience in academics pertaining to your field, right, Sanjan? Like, this is also very important.
Yeah,
And it's not
absolutely.
just you're a great dancer or something, which the US schools would be raving about, but you are knowledgeable, you have got experiences within your field that you will pursue throughout your studies at the
Yeah.
institution you get admitted.
One thing, yeah, one thing I will add just very quickly, a very big advantage of like let's say something like Oxford and Cambridge over Ivy Leagues is just like the class sizes. So I'll give you an example right now. The way Oxford and Cambridge work, they are similar to let's say in US and let's say Harvard and Yale. They're divided into colleges, right? They have the college system where like people, but in the US it's more about housing, right? So let's say at Harvard they have like multiple different colleges where students like kind of live within those colleges. In the UK, students study within those colleges as well. So then you get basically very, very, very small classes. I can give you an example. Like one of my friends who got into Cambridge, they ended up like their class is roughly going to be only like 10 people. Like people studying their major, it's only 10 people. And so their class sizes are roughly, aside from the occasional lecture, are just around mostly 5 to 10 people. In the UK, if you go to like Oxford or Cambridge, there's a lot more like kind of individual, like personalized study, right? You get a lot more access to the professors. It's a lot more, I don't know if like maybe the right word for the class environment is closer because you don't have like there aren't that many students. Like let's say within a college, you might have only like 20 people studying one major, right? Over all of the years. That's not a 1 year, that's over all the years. So because of that, you get a lot more attention from the staff. And yeah, you're just able to like do a lot more with the professors compared to what you can in like traditional American schools. So yeah, that's like another advantage of the UK. Honestly, if you have the funds or potentially like something like a Yurtlumide if you're Uzbek or an Uzbek citizen, it's definitely a good option to look at. Right now, the key issue is just finances and like academics because they do require IB, AP, or A levels. So yeah, thank you for
Yeah,
having me.
thank you so much, Sanjar. And this is also a good example of that ecosystem, the admissions ecosystem, right? We had a question from UK, and then suddenly we had someone who is ready to chip in. And yeah, Ziviata, you can message in the chat of the freshman group on Telegram if you have any additional questions. I would say when it comes to writing specifically, taking the admissions program for UK would over prepare you for the writing side of the UK admissions, because again you will learn both how to write creatively, and you would go really to the depths, to the deep waters of writing. All of that is not necessary for a UK education, which is a lot more straightforward, and the same goes for almost everything. So you will learn a lot more nuance. So of course it will over prepare you, but we'll see. If you are considering admissions program or full support will probably be a better option if you're considering those universities. But we'll have to scramble and bring in some of the team members who, yeah, we'll need to adjust some of our program for you. But it's not out of the question. And to be honest, right now we are in the direction of taking up UK, because we do think that at least on the writing front, I don't think we'll have any challenges there. But also there's an interview aspect to it where you need individual support, but it's whole other level, the whole other discussion. Guys, a few more questions. So somebody's asking, I'm in the 9th grade, should I apply right now? Absolutely do apply Shachlo, and then we will evaluate if it makes sense for you to apply as a 9th grader. Like I said, it will position you like no other program. And also that's freshman prepare only for American universities. Anything within the American system would be something that we prepare you for. I've applied to scholars admissions, full support. When can I get our decisions? We had 100 applications for scholars, and we're doing our best to cover, review them as soon as possible. We have 2 people who are reviewing them, and we'll add more. So within a week, 2 weeks, I think all of those should come out. In June, we are planning the admissions program, the next admissions program. Guys, we'll wrap it up right here. Thank you so much for joining, and hopefully it was a learning experience for all of you. good luck. And if you have any questions, message them in the group, message them in the freshman group. Ruhshona, Sanjar, thank you so much for joining in today. And Sanjar, have a safe flight. Take care, everyone. See you guys.
Yeah, thank you. Take care, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.